One of the questions that I get asked frequently is about picking the right shoes for the Camino Santiago. And I think the best way for me to answer this question is not to tell you what the right answer is, but to encourage you to explore the options that are available in footwear and to discover which shoe will be the right shoe for your Camino. And I would say shoe or shoes. And the best way that I can think of to share this information with you is by describing to you my own process. So at the time that I was preparing for my first Camino, I had no experience in hiking shoes, but I did have a lot of history as a runner of half marathons and walking for long distances, but in an unloaded sense. So in other words, walking leisurely for long distances without a backpack. And by that time that I was preparing for the Camino Portuguese, I was aware that I can walk for very long distances in Brooks Ghost running shoes, and I can also run for long distance in those same shoes without having any problems in terms of blisters on my feet. So as I was preparing to discover which footwear options would be best for me for my first Camino, I decided to start with Brooks Ghost as a baseline. However, as I was doing my research about the process of walking the Camino, I quickly learned that it would be a good idea for me to have a more substantial shoe for this trek. And so I decided to go to REI and ask the experts who sell those kinds of shoes. In fact, I have to tell you that I was very thankful that I did take the journey to REI and talk to the salespeople there about different shoes that were available to me at that time. And based on their recommendations, I decided to try on 3 different types of hiking shoes. And the recommendation from that shoe expert was a low profile hiking shoe. So I tried on 1 Hoka shoe, 1 Oboz shoe, and 1 Merrell shoe. And I simply put them on and walked around the store and felt the way that each shoe felt on my foot, right and left, and just felt out that process on my first visit. And I decided not to buy any shoe on that particular day, but just to record that experience as information. So in other words, what shoe intuitively felt at that time like the best fit for me. In the meantime, I came across a sale at Hollowbird Sports, and some of you may be familiar with Hollowbird Sports. It's a great company. I first became familiar with them through running shoes, but they have a huge inventory and they frequently have some great offers on their closeouts. And so at that time, I decided to also order a pair of Brooks Cascadia, which is a trail running shoe. So while I was making the decision about the information I received from my first visit at REI, I decided to walk for long distance in the Brooks Cascadia shoes, and that went very well as I was increasing walking mileage unweighted. But it soon became clear once I started weighting my backpack that after a few miles of walking with a loaded backpack, and loaded, I mean like 20 to 25 pounds, I quickly noticed that I was developing a squeeze in the forefront of my shoe. And so for those of you who are not familiar with what a squeeze is a phenomenon that takes place when the structures start to change in the compartment due to water or air pressure. So in this case, the longer that I was walking, my foot was starting to swell and the shoe was becoming more tight around, the sensation of tightness developed around my foot from the parameters of the shoe. So really the shoe wasn't getting smaller, my foot was getting bigger. The point is a squeeze can be very uncomfortable, and if it goes on prolongedly, that can lead to blister formation. So at the point that I realized the Brooks Cascadia was not going to be the primary shoe for my first Camino, I decided to return to REI and try a second pairing of shoes. And so I did, and I tried on, I believe, the same 3 types of shoes that I started with originally. So this was a Merrell low profile hiking shoe, a Hoka low profile hiking shoe, and the Oboz Sawtooth, which is the shoe that really felt right for me on both occasions that I went to REI. And so in my case, the discovery of what was the right shoe for my Camino turned out to be the Oboz Sawtooth. I did a lot of reading about that shoe prior to purchasing it, and at the time it got some mixed reviews. Some reviews that said the shoe didn't hold up well at all, but actually my experience of the Camino was about 163 miles. I went from Porto, Portugal to Santiago de Compostela over the course of 2 weeks, and I had no problems with the Oboz Sawtooth. In fact, I was very happy with that shoe, and it was my go-to shoe for most of the Camino. I also decided to take 2 other pairs of shoes with me. One pair was the Brooks Ghost shoe that I am used to walking in and running in, and I did not wear that most of the time during my actual trek with my backpack, but it was great to have a second pair of shoes for other times of the day, just to give my feet a break from being in that more rigid and heavy shoe. And I also chose to carry with me a pair of Havaianas flip-flops. Those are called chinelos, but here in the States we call them flip-flops. And it was really good to have a pair of chinelos with me to really let my feet be free at the end of the day. And it was also very useful to have those chinelos with me for things like showering at the hostels, and let's not forget going to the beach as I was walking along the Portuguese coast. And so in closing, I would just encourage each of you to take your time to explore which shoe options are available to you, and also how do those options feel over time as you are preparing for the Camino. And so this should not be a hasty decision. This should be a decision that's made by obtaining body wisdom during the course of preparation. And so as you are building up mileage and subsequently building up mileage with a loaded backpack, how does it change the sensation that you're feeling in your feet as you're walking over distance? Do your feet feel like they're supported? Do the arches of your feet feel supported? Do your toes feel supported? Are you experiencing any rubbing in weird places between your toes or around your heels, and or are you experiencing any numbness or tingling in your toes? So those kinds of body clues will give you very important information about how your foot needs to be better supported during those longer days of walking the Camino. And one final important detail about picking the shoe, and that is that the shoe very much goes with the sock. And so finding which sock is best for you will be another important decision that you make as you prepare for your Camino. And we will talk about socks in another episode. Thank you for joining me today. Bon Camino. Hi, this is Alexis at BEIJO Group. If you enjoyed the information presented in this video, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. This helps us grow the channel and reach others who may also be interested in this information.
Thank you for watching.